What if every single election you have ever stressed over and every war you've ever read about was entirely scripted by a room of unnamed directors?
It is a pretty wild thought. I mean, it demands a complete suspension of the reality we interact with every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And today, you are joining us for a deep dive into a single, utterly bizarre audio file. It basically claims your favorite politicians are no different than actors playing James Bond.
Right. And that the entire geopolitical landscape is nothing but a manufactured movie set.
It's honestly fascinating. The file we're looking at is just titled Audio Tercon 114129177868 Puck and on 4A, which, is a very catchy title.
Oh, very memorable. But the core premise of this recording is that the visible leaders of the world are just hired talent.
Right.
If you want to understand global events, this source argues that you have to stop looking at the actors on the stage and, well, start looking for the directors hiding in the shadows.
Now, before we tear into the mechanics of this theory, I really need to make something incredibly clear to you, our listener.
Yeah, this is important.
Right, because this source material points its finger at several highly polarizing political figures. It specifically names Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden.
It definitely goes there.
It does. So we are putting a massive, flashing impartiality disclaimer on this deep dive right now. Our goal today is absolutely not to endorse, validate, or take sides on any political viewpoints whatsoever.
We are definitely not here to debate the actual merits or flaws of these politicians.
Exactly. We are treating this audio strictly as a fascinating text. We're just analyzing its overarching theory of global power without endorsing its underlying politics.
Yeah, we are basically just dissecting the architecture of the argument, and the way the speaker builds that architecture starts with a pop culture metaphor.
Right, which I thought was super interesting.
It instantly reframes how we view authority.
Right.
Right? The source asks us to look at the James Bond movie franchise.
It's such a brilliant, accessible entry point for such a massive conspiracy theory. I mean, everyone knows James Bond.
Exactly. So you start with Sean Connery. For a whole generation, he was the definitive British spy.
Right.
But when Connery inevitably walked away from the role, the franchise didn't collapse. I mean, the studio didn't shut down.
No, they held auditions and brought in Roger Moore.
Exactly. The face changed. But the underlying business model, the narrative structure, the box office output, well, it didn't flinch at all.
And it doesn't matter who takes the role next either. You swap in Pierce Brosnan, then Daniel Craig.
Right.
The audience just keeps buying tickets. They get completely invested in the new face, while the corporation funding the blockbuster just, keeps cashing the checks.
And the source is arguing that presidents and prime ministers are literally no different than Sean Connery or Daniel Craig.
Okay, let's unpack this. Is the speaker essentially saying that our elections, our intense political debates, are genuine civic outrage?
Yeah.
Is he saying all of this is the equivalent of arguing over whether Daniel Craig or Pierce Brosnan was the better Bond, while we completely ignore the studio executives who actually own the franchise?
What's fascinating here is how this framework attempts to instantly neutralize all political anxiety for the listener.
Wow, yeah, I see that.
Right. It offers this perfectly smooth, unified explanation for a chaotic, unpredictable world.
Because it's easier than reality.
Exactly. The audio explicitly claims that figures like Trump or Netanyahu are just hired to hit specific plot points.
Like they're cast in a role.
Yeah. It suggests Trump is cast to play the bad guy role, and Netanyahu is cast to keep the war going. They're handed a script, and their only job is to just hit their marks.
The source actually mocks the idea of obsessing over the actors. I think this speaker says something like, am I crazy? I liked Sean Connery, I watched the movie, I enjoyed the movie, and that's it. I came back home.
Right, like treating politics exactly like leaving a cinema.
Yeah. He implies it is completely useless to focus on the politicians. And honestly, it makes you pause and think about how much daily emotional energy we spend debating the people standing at the podiums.
While being completely oblivious to who might be paying for the microphone.
Exactly.
Which forces us to look at the implications of that logic. I mean, if the daily news is just a movie, if the theme is always the same.
Same villains, same heroes.
Exactly. Same manufactured villains and heroes. Then getting emotionally invested in the actor is a deliberate distraction designed by the directors.
It's all sleight of hand.
Yeah. He argues the CEO of the corporation funding the movie is just an employee presiding over a meeting. The real wealth, the real power, is buried so deep behind the scenes that the audience doesn't even know who to be angry at.
If we follow that logic, it really breaks down the walls of our present reality. But it also acts like a bulldozer through the past.
Oh, completely.
Because if modern political leaders are just actors following a script today, well, who wrote the script for the biggest, most devastating conflicts in human history?
That is where he takes a massive leap.
Yeah. The audio takes this Hollywood metaphor and applies it directly to the world wars, just completely reevaluating the history we've all been taught.
Yeah, the source takes a sledgehammer to the textbook consensus.
Yeah.
The speaker claims that the established historical triggers for the world wars were nothing more than minor issues and lame excuses.
Lame excuses. I mean, that is an incredibly dismissive phrase for events that altered the globe.
It really is.
We all know the standard historical sequence for World War I. We are taught that the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914, triggered this massive tragic domino effect.
Right, the whole powder keg.
Yeah. We know about the resulting alliance systems, the Triple Entente with Britain, France, and Russia facing up against Germany, Austria, Hungary, and Italy.
But the source lists these exact facts only to throw them out the window.
Right.
He argues that none of these things, nationalism, alliances, or a single assassination, but he says none of it constitutes a logical reason to mobilize the planet and slaughter millions of people.
And he applies that exact same cynical lens to World War II, right? He looks at the Treaty of Versailles in 1919.
Yeah, the treaty that ended WWI.
Exactly. And we are taught that the punitive fallout of that treaty, the lost territory, the crushing financial reparations, the military restrictions, we're taught that squeezed Germany so hard that it created the perfect volatile environment for the rise of Hitler and Nazism.
But the source looks at that entire causal chain and just dismisses it as another manufactured pretext.
I have to push back hard on this part, though. The source explicitly asks if any of this grand geopolitical maneuvering matters to the common person who just wants to work, buy food, and sit in peace with their family.
Right, he appeals to the everyday person.
But millions of those exact common people died in these trenches and cities. I mean, how can the speaker classify global military alliances or the Treaty of Versailles as just lame excuses when the real-world body count was so utterly devastating?
It's a tough pill to swallow, for sure. But it requires understanding the source's core philosophical absolute, which is that visible actors have zero agency.
Oh, zero.
Right. To this speaker, a treaty doesn't cause a war any more than a movie script causes real explosion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. The devastation, the death toll, the suffering, he acknowledges that is all incredibly real. But the stated reason for the devastation is a complete fabrication.
It's just the cover story.
Exactly. He is asking you to consider the massive gap between how history is taught in a classroom and how it is actually engineered in a boardroom.
Right.
If you accept that the Treaty of Versailles caused World War II, you are admitting that the actors on the geopolitical stage actually have the power to steer the ship. The source fundamentally refuses to believe the steering wheel is connected to the tires.
And he brings this exact same logic right up to the present minute, looking at the modern fears of a Third World War.
He does.
He specifically targets the ongoing panic over Iran potentially acquiring a nuclear bomb. The audio fires off this rapid sequence of questions.
Right, asking why it's such a specific panic.
Yeah. He asks, why is it a global crisis if Iran gets a nuclear bomb, but we collectively shrug and accept that North Korea has one? Why Pakistan? Why India? Why Japan or Germany?
And by highlighting that other nations possess advanced nuclear technology without triggering a daily World War III countdown, the source is arguing that the crisis around Iran is entirely artificial.
It's just another script.
Yeah. It's a plot point written into the current season of a global TV show to generate a specific outcome, no different than the Archduke's assassination was a plot point a century ago.
So, if the historical triggers are fake, if they're just these massive manufactured distractions for unimaginable violence, we are left with a gaping hole in the theory.
Who is writing the script?
Exactly. Who is manufacturing them? The logistics of pulling off a staged world war are impossible without a central coordinating body. Does the audio actually name who is doing this?
Well, this is where the theory shifts from historical revisionism into sort of quasi-mythology.
Right.
The source refers to these unseen architects simply as the wise people or the geniuses.
The wise people. I mean, it sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It really does. Yet the source credits this mythical group with constructing very real, very tangible global infrastructure.
Like what?
According to the audio, these unseen forces are the true founders and operators of massive financial and diplomatic institutions. He names the Bank of England, the World Bank, the United Nations, and the International Monetary Fund.
Okay, controlling the global money supply via the IMF and the World Bank makes logical sense for a shadow cabal. But then the audio takes a sharp left turn that completely threw me.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say.
It jumps from international diplomacy straight into, well, skirts and beauty pageants.
Yes. Yes, it does. The source claims these exact same wise people created the modern fashion industry, specifically dictating that women wear short skirts to show their legs.
It's just so specific.
And he claims they established beauty pageants like Miss World and Miss Universe.
I am struggling with the scale and the mechanics of this, to be honest. How exactly does a shadow banking elite coordinate global fashion trends?
It seems like a stretch.
Are they sitting in a smoky room at the World Bank voting on M-lines? It just feels like an absurd juxtaposition.
It sounds totally absurd until you look at the mechanism of psychological control the source is implying.
Okay, explain that.
It's not about micromanaging fashion designers, right? It's about funding and elevating a culture of pure superficiality. The logic is that the wise people need to occupy human attention comprehensively.
Oh, I see.
If you are watching a catwalk, debating beauty standards, and consuming fashion media, your brain is entirely occupied by the spectacle.
You aren't auditing the Federal Reserve.
Exactly. You aren't looking for the names of the people extracting your wealth.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The source uses this analogy of a child's piggy bank, like a locked coin box. He points out that if you don't have the key to open it, you simply turn it upside down and shake it until a single dollar falls out.
Right. I mean, he scales that shaking process up to the entire global population.
Exactly. He says, imagine turning 8 billion people upside down and shaking them. Even if you only extract one tiny dollar from each person through debt, inflation, or consumerism, the cumulative wealth you hoard is staggering.
It's a massive scale.
So, to use my own analogy here, we are basically being viewed as the loose change in the couch cushions of the global elite.
That is the precise dynamic. We are a resource to be passively mined. But notice the inherent contradiction in the speaker's own worldview here.
What's that?
Well, he knows the mechanics of the piggy bank. He knows these wise people control the IMF and the Miss Universe pageant. Yet he openly admits in the audio, I don't have their exact names.
It's the ultimate paradox of every grand conspiracy theory. The power is simultaneously everywhere. It dictates your bank loans, your television programming, your history curriculum, but it remains completely invisible.
And in the psychology of conspiracy, that lack of evidence isn't a flaw. It is actually the ultimate proof of their power.
Because if we could see them, they wouldn't be in charge.
Right. If we could name them, they wouldn't be the true masters. Their total anonymity is what makes them geniuses.
But practically speaking, if this shadowy group is shaking down 8 billion people like a giant coin box and treating world wars like movie sequels, how do they prevent a massive global riot?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. How do they keep the politicians from breaking character and whistleblowing? This brings us to the source's final major point, and probably the most unsettling one. It's the absolute airtight control of the global narrative.
Right. Because for a system this vast, military might is too messy and too expensive to maintain order.
Yeah.
The elite's primary survival tool is narrative control. It is the power to seamlessly make bad look good and good look bad.
He points directly to the media, calling out CNN specifically and the massive corporate money-backing social media algorithms.
Right.
They don't just report the news. They manufacture a storyline, point all the cameras at it, and tell the globe, this is what you care about today. And we, as the audience, just eat the popcorn and follow the plot.
To illustrate how deeply this conditioning penetrates the human mind, the source shares an incredibly striking personal anecdote about a homeless man he met at a gas station.
This was the moment in the audio that really stopped me.
It's powerful.
The speaker asks this homeless man who is visibly destitute and struggling what his biggest fear in the world is. You would expect the man to say freezing on the street, or starvation, or violence.
Right. Immediate physical needs.
Instead, the man replies that his greatest fear is that Iran should not have a nuclear bomb.
And when pressed on the issue, the man admits he knows absolutely nothing about Iran's actual geopolitical statements, their nuclear capabilities, or international relations.
Nothing at all.
He just knows, deep in his bones, that Iran shouldn't have a bomb.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this anecdote is the dark, beating heart of the source's entire thesis.
Yeah, it really is.
The narrative manufactured by the wise people is so overwhelmingly potent that it literally overwrites a person's immediate physical reality.
Exactly.
A man whose primary biological directive should be finding his next meal is instead agonizing over international nuclear proliferation, simply because the media beamed that anxiety directly into his brain.
It is an unparalleled level of psychological capture. Grand conspiracy theories often serve as psychological armor for people, right?
Yeah, like a coping mechanism.
Exactly. It's easier to believe an evil genius is running the world than to accept that the world is chaotic, random, and leaderless. But the source takes it a step further. He argues this capture doesn't just affect the vulnerable or the uneducated. He scales this narrative control all the way up to the highest echelons of academia.
He does. He specifically calls out prominent public intellectuals. He names Professor Jeffrey Sachs and someone he refers to as Professor Schimmer, which, in the context of global relations, is almost certainly a reference to John Mearsheimer.
Right.
The speaker asks the obvious question. If this conspiracy is real, why aren't these brilliant, independent minds exposing it?
His answer reveals the airtight seal on his worldview. He claims these professors aren't exposing the system because they are hired actors within it, just like the politicians.
I want to dig into the how of that, though. Does he mean the wise people are literally handing briefcases of cash to professors? Because he says the system only hires wise people, not dummies.
It's likely more insidious than literal bribes. The implication is that the entire ecosystem of academia, prestige, tenure, and publishing is funded and curated by the elite.
So it's an institutional filter.
Exactly. The system filters out anyone who challenges the foundational paradigm. You only achieve the status of a globally recognized intellectual if your thoughts naturally align with, or at least do not threaten, the wise people's overarching script.
It's an impenetrable defense mechanism for his theory.
Oh, completely.
If the system only elevates the wise, the speaker essentially believes that literally anyone who disagrees with him is either a clueless dummy who can't see the truth or a compromised genius who has been bought off by the elite.
Right. There is absolutely zero room for honest intellectual disagreement.
If a historian says World War II is real, they are a paid actor. If the media challenges him, the media is fake. It's a closed loop.
Which is the hallmark of totalizing fatalism. Once you believe every input is manipulated, your entire reality becomes untrustworthy.
So what does this all mean? We've spent this time unpacking a grand, sweeping theory of everything. In this worldview, world wars are fake excuses, global leaders are just taking direction, the IMF and beauty pageants are two sides of the same distraction coin,
Right.
and the media has hypnotized us into worrying about Iran while our pockets are picked. What is the source's ultimate call to action for us? What are we supposed to do with this terrifying enlightenment?
Well, the conclusion is surprisingly heavily defeated.
Yeah, I was shocked by this.
After exposing what he believes is the ultimate matrix of human existence, the speaker simply advises his audience to keep your cool. He tells the listener to stop jumping around blaming Trump or Netanyahu because you are just yelling at actors on a screen.
He literally challenges the listener to put themselves in the shoes of a politician. He says, think yourself you are a Trump. Give me a solution. And before you can even answer, he drops the hammer. He says, no, there's no solution to anything.
He genuinely believes the people running the world are simply wiser, more organized, and infinitely more powerful than the rest of us.
They're just untouchable.
Right. The system is too vast to dismantle. The speaker confesses that he has given up. He says it is a full stop for him. He refuses to task his brain with it any further, stating he has other things to do.
It is a philosophy of total, crushing resignation in the face of omnipotent, invisible power.
It really is.
It's a wild place to land. He believes he has uncovered the ultimate terrifying truth of the human condition, and his reaction is basically, well, the car's locked, we are in the trunk, the driver is a psychopath, so just try to take a nap.
That is a perfect way to put it.
It brings us completely full circle. We started by looking for the steering wheel of history. The source tells us the steering wheel is a prop, the car is remote controlled by invisible geniuses, and we should just stop stressing out about the route.
But that absolute fatalism leaves us with one final, lingering contradiction to mull over.
Oh, what's that?
The source insists that unseen forces control every single narrative we consume. The media, the universities, the politicians. It's all a perfectly sealed script written by the wise people, and he concludes we should just give up because they're too smart to beat.
Right. Wait.
Yeah. If that is undeniably true, what does it say about the speaker himself?
Oh, wow.
By recording this very audio, by breaking down the James Bond metaphor, by distributing this file and trying to wake you up to his theory, isn't he inherently proving that individual rebellion against the narrative is still possible?
Because he managed to figure it out, right?
Exactly. He managed to figure it out after all. Or if the system is truly as perfect and inescapable as he claims, is it possible that a recording explicitly telling you to give up and accept there are no solutions is exactly what the directors would want you to hear?
That is a terrifying thought.
Is his act of rebellion just another line of dialogue in the script?